So just to give some background, how long has Alberta been doing live shows and live music?
I mean, Alberta Street Pub has been a venue for many years. I used to play there probably 15 years ago. When I took over booking it, the current owners at that time were looked at it more of like a bar that had some shows. And when they hired me, they really wanted to pivot to being like a legitimate live music venue first. We used to change it to doing music 7 nights a week, multiple shows a day. Like we had a happy hour show, basically try to put as much live music in there as we could. But then obviously, we got shut down. I think it was March 13th when pretty much everything closed down. We tried reopening a couple times in June, again in November. The freeze happened and shut us back down again. And then we waited until we opened basically right at the beginning of February.
When the pandemic first hit, what were the biggest challenges and concerns for you?
Our biggest concern as a music venue first was that so much of our business relies on actually the live music component. And we knew that that was going to be one of the last, like once it became clear what the pandemic really was and that this was going to be, a much bigger problem than anyone initially anticipated. Our biggest concern was just that that being able to really do shows is probably really going to be one of the very last things that becomes possible again, just due to social distancing and singing in the air and spit and breathing on a microphone and all these little things that you have to think about and sharing equipment. For me, this has been a really interesting kind of balancing act between taking into consideration the health risks involved with reopening at all, much less doing live music, and how do we do this and how do we keep everybody in their seats and all of these things, but balancing that with also the risk that is being posed to not only the bar and restaurant community as a whole, people going out of business, but we have almost 20 employees some of whom never got unemployment. A lot of people are in a pretty bad situation. And then you take into consideration, the entire music community who don't really even have access to things. Basically, they're, freelance essentially. So a lot of those folks didn't have access to really any help at all. So that's been our sort of focus this entire time, is how do we help the communities that need help that we are responsible for, but also be responsible to the community at large in terms of not putting people at risk and not encouraging behavior that's going to get people sick or put people in a bad situation. So it's been a challenge for sure.
When you were kind of leading up to bringing live shows back and looking at that, how did you make that plan for how to adapt live music to this COVID restricted environment and world that we're in?
Yeah, so a couple of the biggest factors there were, there's just some straight up technical things we have to, people can't share microphones, just some very basic things where we're okay, let's go through this whole process. What do we have to sanitize? What do people need to bring themselves that they didn't used to have to bring just for safety purposes? So we sort of rewrote our whole, we call it a run of show, basically all the details of a show that the artists would get beforehand, with all of these COVID things in mind. So if you do not have your own vocal mic, please let us know. We're going to have sanitized ones available. Please don't, leave your mic up, take it down when you're done. Don't let anyone else sing on it. Just all these strange little things. But really for us, the biggest challenge was not so much running the show from the musician's perspective, but running the show from the audience perspective has been really complicated. So basically the system that we came up with was, we can't sell individual tickets anymore because people have to be in their group, and they need to be seated. And, there's all these factors. So what we came up with is basically selling tickets by the table, which would then keep people in a group together. So our tables are, can be socially distanced, but within that context, we can have, right now it's up to 6 people can sit together in one group, 2 households. So we implemented that to kind of try to make a situation where we didn't have people wandering around and either sitting down with their friends or which of course I would love, but right now it's just it's not safe. So we're trying to keep people in their pods that they're already sort of exposed to, was a big part. And so we had to come up with a system to do that on our website and all that stuff. And then the other part is like, the unfortunate part is that you also do have to police this, which really sucks for our employees right now to have that. You know, it's bad enough that you know, bartenders need to be monitoring people for like over service or bad behavior of other types, which is common in bars. But like having to constantly go over and, you know, ask people to like sit back down, or, you know, hey, if you know, get up to go to the bathroom, you have to remember your mask. There's all these little things and signage and, you know, trying to just like keep people aware of the necessities of trying to do this right now. So it's, you know, we're still in the learning curve, to be honest. Like we have meetings, you know, probably once or twice a week with our management, just trying to be like, okay, well, what happened this last Saturday? Okay, now how do we fix that problem? And like, you know, every week is kind of like something that unforeseen that we now have to be like, oh, well, okay, now we have to address that. So it's been a lot of work.
Looking at the calendar, almost all of the shows have been sold out. Obviously, the reaction has been really great from the public and from artists as well. How have you gauged that reaction to Alberta Street Pub bringing live music back right now?
We were honestly very pleasantly surprised. We didn't know what to expect at all. And, you know, a lot of our shows are selling out, like they're not even up for an hour before they're sold out. And the ticket prices are, you know, like people are charging a decent amount for shows, because obviously a lot of these folks haven't worked in a year. So we're trying to help them get back on their feet. And that's been massively encouraging to us. And, you know, I'm really hoping that this isn't a situation where there's like a backslide from this, because what I'm seeing is that like a community that has like placed an entirely new value on live music, which, you know, frankly, makes me super happy. And so what we're really hoping is that this isn't something that like, you know, 6 months from now, people are just gonna be like, oh yeah, you know, I only want to go see a $5 show. But that people really now realize how important it was because they didn't have it for a year, and that this creates kind of a new culture of like how people value live music and the musicians that play it. So we're really hoping that we can kind of keep this model moving forward in some ways, even though of course, like I can't wait to be able to just sell a single ticket to a show and not have to have someone buy a table and, you know, just be like, hey, you can stand next to anybody. It's cool again, you know, like it'll be fine. And who knows when or if that will happen. But yeah, overall, I mean, you know, I've seen more adult people like cry in the last 3 months than I've probably seen my entire life. And I mean that in like a really good way. I think just being able to experience sort of the catharsis that people have when they get to like see their favorite band again in person and experience that, even if they have to stay in their chairs or, you know, they can't dance with their friends. But, you know, it does make you, when you see something like that, it does make you feel like you're doing something right.